A sweeping new campaign was being initiated by the Drug Enforcement Administration, designed to confront the rise of substance abuse on university campuses throughout the state. In Wilton Manors, police held the scene through the morning hours, where 6 college students had overdosed on a narcotic suspected to be fentanyl. It was reported that President Trump had authorized a directive instructing the Pentagon to deploy military assets against drug syndicates operating in Latin America. 4:17 a.m., Cambridge, Massachusetts. The campus of Harvard University was cloaked in darkness. Its vacant streets were swallowed by a dense, cold fog, with only the pale, yellow illumination from street lamps cutting through the gloom. Yet, within this profound stillness, a federal operation was already in motion. It was a precise, synchronized, and inexorable maneuver. In a matter of minutes, over 240 federal agents from the FBI, the DEA, and an elite cybersecurity task force closed in on 17 separate locations across Cambridge and the broader Boston metropolitan area. There were no wailing sirens or flashing lights, only the faint crackle of encrypted communications and the deliberate, measured steps of tactical units converging on their objectives. The operation's central focus was not a cartel leader, a street-level dealer, or an organized crime syndicate. It was a husband and wife, Dr. Samir Alfed, 52, and Dr. Layla Hassan Alfed, 49. They were 2 Harvard University professors, widely praised for their academic research, groundbreaking innovations, and contributions to the field of education. For years, their public life consisted of award stages and donor handshakes, of posing for pictures next to university accolades, all while federal investigators were silently assembling a case that would stagger the country. At 4:18 in the morning, the main entrance to their upscale townhouse was breached. Tactical units swarmed the interior. Dr. Alfed made a move for a laptop on the kitchen counter, but an agent snapped it shut before any data could be erased. This was far more than an academic disgrace. According to the federal case file, this raid was the first move against a clandestine network responsible for laundering nearly $1.9 billion in illicit funds, all linked to major drug trafficking enterprises that had plagued American cities for years, concealed behind a veneer of institutional prestige. And the evidence agents were about to secure would reveal just how deeply the corruption had penetrated America's most respected institutions. What federal agents would uncover next was a truth of a much darker and more profoundly disturbing nature. There was another pressing national issue, halting the massive fraud that was siphoning vast sums of money from American taxpayers. The fraud was allegedly being perpetrated by segments of the Somali population in Minnesota. The search of the residence proceeded with a swift, methodical silence. Agents meticulously cleared the townhouse, one room at a time, documenting walls adorned with framed diplomas, lifetime achievement plaques, and official correspondence from esteemed Ivy League institutions. Every detail appeared immaculate, flawless, and deliberately arranged, until a canine unit alerted in the master bedroom. Concealed by a custom-crafted oak wardrobe, agents found a section of the wall that sounded hollow. A hidden panel retracted, exposing a reinforced steel safe that had been bolted into the concrete foundation. Breaching it took 14 minutes. That discovery fundamentally shifted the investigation's focus. Inside, agents found $950,000 in cash, compressed into vacuum-sealed bricks. There were no bank wrappers, no ledgers, just currency recorded and bundled for rapid transit. Underneath the money were 11 encrypted USB drives, 3 hard drives of industrial capacity, and a leather-bound journal containing a single, handwritten entry: shipping inventory. After the money came, the narcotics. Stored in medical-grade packaging were 27 kilograms of cocaine, stamped and sealed, alongside fentanyl powder camouflaged as chemical research compounds. Investigators would later confirm the amount was enough to create over 8 million fatal doses. This was not for research. It was inventory for distribution. Back on the kitchen counter sat the laptop Dr. Samir Alfed had desperately tried to access just moments before. The machine was still active. An encrypted data transfer was still visible on the screen, frozen in the middle of an upload. Its timestamp read 4:16 a.m. In the garage, hidden behind storage shelves marked archived course materials, agents located another cache. It contained burner phones, an array of international SIM cards, and shipping manifests funneled through shell corporations with academic-sounding identities: Bolab Supplies, Advanced Research Transport, Ivy Medical Freight. At 5:02 in the morning, Federal Command broadcast a priority notification. This case had evolved beyond financial crimes. It was no longer a matter of academic corruption. This was a drug trafficking organization operating deep within the country's elite, protected by academic titles, credentials, and a code of silence. And the data trail indicated it had functioned undetected for almost a decade. This was merely the surface layer. The core of the operation was still concealed in plain view. As the sun began to rise, the investigation had already expanded beyond the confines of the townhouse. Federal teams recalibrated their attention toward what they now theorized was the true mechanism powering the enterprise, the academic infrastructure itself. At 6:40 a.m., agents made entry into a research facility associated with Harvard University, a building publicly designated as a center for medical innovation and international collaboration. Behind the door was a world of pristine white walls, sleek glass desks, and framed declarations of a commitment to public service. Yet this sterile aesthetic concealed 6 server racks humming ceaselessly, consuming an amount of electricity on par with a small data center. What investigators discovered within the system was not academic inquiry. It was a meticulously kept set of books. The records documented a massive influx of capital, all under benign and respectable labels: research grants, philanthropic gifts, and global scholarships. But from there, the money trail fractured. These funds were systematically rerouted into exorbitant consulting fees, phantom equipment leases, and international pilot programs that yielded no verifiable academic results. The same 4 financial shells surfaced again and again in the data. There was the Harvard Legacy Relief Foundation, a nonprofit that had collected $420 million in just 7 years, and the Cambridge Academic Consulting Group, which billed its advisory services at $38,000 an hour. There was also IV Biotech Innovations, a corporate offshoot sitting on $610 million from unknown sources. And finally, the North River Property Trust, which had discreetly purchased 23 properties spanning 3 states. In sum, these front companies had processed an estimated $1.2 billion, cleaning the money through bureaucratic paperwork so ordinary that it evaded detection for years. In the public eye, it was the picture of academic achievement. To the investigators tracking the money, it was an elaborate disguise. A single line item in the ledger exposed the entire operation. Equipment transport, $84 million. No equipment ever arrived. No laboratories were ever constructed. The money simply disappeared upon payment. By 8:15 a.m., federal cyber analysts had concluded the pattern was deliberate. This was a system structured, replicable, and highly efficient. The professors were not just involved, they were the masterminds. This was not a case of isolated fraud. It was a criminal enterprise that weaponized prestige for protection, used academic credentials as a shield, and exploited public trust as its primary asset. The financial data indicated the operation had run silently and undisturbed for 9 years until this moment. The question that now consumed investigators was where the physical operation was concealed, a critical piece of information needed to finally dismantle the entire network. By mid-morning, a single overriding question consumed Federal Command, a question that rendered every spreadsheet and shell company secondary. Where was the physical product being manufactured and distributed? The break in the case didn't come from the financial trail. It came from surveillance. At 9:12 a.m., a convoy of tactical vehicles was moving on an industrial warehouse located just outside Boston. The target property belonged to a little-known logistics firm, Ivy Harbor Logistics LLC, an entity whose official records were flawless. Its filings declared its main cargo as laboratory equipment and medical supplies. Its shipping manifests were immaculate. Site inspections turned up 0 violations. Financial audits raised no red flags. Within the regional shipping industry, its reputation was impeccable. And that was the key to its success. The warehouse was situated in a busy industrial corridor, surrounded by legitimate businesses, cold storage depots, seafood wholesalers, and pharmaceutical supply chains. Trucks arrived and departed at all hours, their movements lost in the constant rhythm of commerce. To any outside observer, it was just background noise. But for investigators, it was the final piece of the puzzle. The reality of the operation lay behind reinforced steel doors. As federal agents forced entry into the loading bay, they were met with instant and brutal force. From behind stacks of pallets, Three armed individuals, later confirmed to be trusted enforcers for the professor's network, opened fire. A barrage of automatic weapon fire tore through the vast, open space, shattering any notion of a simple logistics hub. Federal tactical units found cover, responded with disciplined fire, and eliminated the threat in under 46 seconds. There were no agent fatalities. No civilians were on site. But the implication was clear and chilling. This was far more than a financial crime. This was a fortified, defended enterprise. Past the chaotic loading area, agents found what all the shell corporations were engineered to hide. A false concrete wall gave way to the network's heart. A hidden processing facility running at a massive industrial capacity. Heavy hydraulic presses were bolted directly to the concrete floor. Rows of precision scales sat on stainless steel tables. Industrial drums of chemical cutting agents were neatly stored. Along the perimeter, stations for heat-sealing packages were set up for mass production. A web of surveillance cameras monitored every corner, all wired to a closed-circuit system. This was no laboratory. It was a factory in every sense of the word. Then, investigators began the inventory. Steel shelving units held 3.2 tons of cocaine, all compressed into uniform 1-kilogram bricks. In sealed drums nearby, they found 320 kilograms of pure fentanyl powder, its containers falsely labeled as chemical research compounds. A later analysis determined the combined product represented more than 25 million fatal doses, a supply capable of flooding the entire Northeast for months. Recovered shipping manifests filled in the final details of the distribution network. Shipments went out weekly in refrigerated trucks, disguised as sensitive research materials. The routes covered Massachusetts, New York, and New Jersey, the trucks merging invisibly with the flow of legitimate commercial traffic. A single, recently intercepted shipment had contained 780 kilograms of product hidden within containers of frozen seafood. By 10:28 a.m., federal teams had the entire facility under control and had taken 11 more individuals into custody, among them the operations logistics managers. The team included armed security professionals and a pair of chemical technicians operating with entirely fabricated credentials. Subsequent ballistics analysis would reveal the firearms from the confrontation were acquired via straw purchasers, who were in turn connected to shell corporations already flagged as part of the network. One officer at the scene offered a chillingly simple summary of the situation. They weren't there to protect a product. They were there to protect the system. That warehouse served as confirmation of an unavoidable truth. The academic facade had never been the ultimate goal. It was simply the shield. What lay behind it was a narcotics trafficking operation of immense scale, armed, disciplined, and organized with meticulous precision, underwritten by prestige, concealed by credentials, and operating out in the open. By early afternoon, the operation was poised to enter its final phase. At 10:06 p.m., within the Unified Federal Command Center, an enormous floor-to-ceiling digital map blinked to life as crimson markers began to populate the display. A dozen appeared at first, then dozens more, a digital plague spreading across Massachusetts, New York, and New Jersey. Each icon represented a node in the same web uncovered at the warehouse. Ghost corporations, cash consolidation hubs, encrypted data servers, and critical transit points. The initiative officially became Operation Ivy Veil. At 1:14 p.m., the executive order was given. Full sweep. Within minutes, a force of over 1,100 federal agents mobilized in a single, simultaneous action. Armored vehicles began to navigate quiet suburban streets. Helicopters ascended from regional airfields. No prior warnings were given. The decisive element was speed. In New Jersey, agents stormed a refrigerated trucking depot that served as a staging ground for outbound shipments. Inside one of the trailers, they found 412 kilograms of cocaine, concealed behind panels of medical-grade insulation. In New York, a financial services office masquerading as a grant management firm was taken. Its servers held the digital footprints of $640 million that had been routed through offshore accounts in 6 separate countries. In northern Massachusetts, a private storage facility gave up $18.6 million in cash, which was being held in climate-controlled lockers rented under false academic identities. By 2:22 p.m., the arrests began to cascade through the network's hierarchy. They were logistics supervisors, financial brokers, information technology specialists, and the attorneys who had quietly constructed the seemingly innocuous contracts that held it all together. In total, 37 individuals were brought into custody in less than 90 minutes. Then, it was time for the final move. At 3:09 p.m., a team of agents approached a gated residential building overlooking the Charles River. Inside, the network's chief financial architect was sitting alone at a glass desk, analyzing spreadsheets. He made no attempt to flee and offered no resistance. On his monitor was a projection of revenue growth that spanned a 12-year period. The figure displayed at the bottom of the document was $3.8 billion. By evening, federal analysts had confirmed the breathtaking scope of the enterprise. Over a period of more than 9 years, the network had successfully moved or laundered $1.5 billion using academic institutions, nonprofits, and logistics firms as cover. It had trafficked in narcotics measured not in kilograms, but in tons. It had systematically corrupted supply chains, official records, and public trust, all without attracting attention or resorting to violence, until its leaders believed they were untouchable. At 8:40 p.m., a senior investigator addressed the command center with a single, stark declaration. This wasn't infiltration, this was occupation, because the most profoundly disturbing discovery had nothing to do with the drugs or the money. It was the plan. Encrypted files revealed meticulously crafted succession charts, training schedules, and detailed contingency protocols. The system was engineered to survive arrests, structured to be passed quietly from one generation of operators to the next, and designed to function behind a facade of respectability, titles, and silence. That is precisely what made Operation Ivy Veil a different kind of case. It did more than just confiscate assets or apprehend individuals. It shattered a machine that was built to hide in plain sight, reminding the nation of a difficult truth. Power doesn't always manifest as violence. Sometimes it wears a suit, presents a resume, and asks to be trusted. By nightfall, the tactical phase of the operation was complete, but the consequences were only just beginning to unfold. What investigators had dismantled that day was not merely a criminal network. It was the destruction of an illusion, the illusion that prestige is a guarantee of integrity and that credentials are an assurance of trust. It dismantled the idea that corruption is always crude, noisy, and obvious. This operation proved the exact opposite. For nearly a decade, a formidable power structure had hidden itself behind academic titles, nonprofit charters, and polished reputations. It moved silently through the very institutions that people are taught to respect. It was built not on fear, but on confidence, on the cold assumption that no one would ever dare to look too closely. That assumption was its fatal flaw. Operation Ivy Veil did far more than uncover drugs, money, or shell companies. It exposed a system that had learned to thrive by achieving perfect camouflage, by choosing business suits instead of masks, and by filing corporate reports instead of firing weapons. And while the arrests had been made and the assets seized, one reality remained. Networks of this sophistication do not simply vanish. They withdraw. They evolve. The pause was intentional, a cold calculation. The genuine peril was never about what had already surfaced. It was about what still lurked, unseen, beneath the surface. It was a chilling principle underscored by the case. The most potent adversaries rarely broadcast their intentions. They emerge cloaked in credibility, asking only for trust. For every face that could be put to the map, another remained in the shadows. It was clear this was not the end of the story. It was merely the end of the beginning. The shattering of Operation Ivy Veil serves as a haunting reminder that the greatest threats to our society do not always emerge from the shadows of back alleys. Sometimes they dwell within the very halls we are taught to revere. This case peels back the polished veneer of prestige to reveal a chilling truth. Credentials are not a compass for character, and a title is never a guarantee of integrity. When we allow ourselves to be blinded by the brilliance of Ivy League accolades or the perceived safety of institutional authority, we create a vacuum where corruption can breathe. We must realize that power, when decoupled from ethics, becomes a weapon, and camouflage is its deadliest feature. True leadership is not measured by the depth of a resume or the weight of a grant, but by a steadfast commitment to the public trust. Let this be a call to radical discernment. We must look beyond the suit, the title, and the prestigious office. We must foster a culture where accountability is demanded of the elite just as strictly as it is of the common citizen. In a world where the most potent adversaries ask for your trust while siphoning your future, our only defense is a relentless pursuit of the truth. Character is what remains when the spotlight of prestige is turned off, and that is the only legacy worth building.